Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Miana Lenoir. I've been guided to share my growth. So this video will just be me telling my story, and I will do another video on how I healed from this trauma. To get started, I was molested by my brother who is 6 years older than me. This took place at my dad's house. We are considered half brother and sister, so this particular brother lived there, and along with my other siblings that he shared a mother with. I lived with my mother. I would go over there every other weekend or for weeks at a time. In the summer, it was just that type of setup. When it started, it felt wrong. I just didn't know what to do about it. I was scared. I was scared to get in trouble. I was scared to get him in trouble. It's just not your average 6-year-old dilemma. As I got older, turning 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I just started to understand what was happening to me and just how wrong it was. It began to affect me mentally to where I was sad a lot, but I cried silent tears. So I cried when I was alone. I cried when I was in the shower, when no one was there, when no one can see me. This is when I released my emotions about this. I thought about stabbing him quite often, and that's just me being honest because I didn't know how to stop this from happening. And it sounds simple to say, oh, just go tell, but this is such a sex itself is just such a secretive thing, especially when it comes to being a child and growing up and learning about sex and learning that it's something that all we know is we shouldn't be doing it. So it mostly took place when I was asleep. He would come into wherever I was and uncover me. He would pull my shirt up, pull my pants down. He would touch me in all kind of ways. He never penetrated me, but he touched me in every way a man would touch a woman that he is having intercourse with. He whispered things to me. He would ask me if I like it, and I just wouldn't respond, and I would just lay there, almost lifeless. It felt like a dream. And that was just my way of escaping what was happening to my body. I remember the smell of semen in my panties when I would get up in the morning and go use the bathroom and wipe myself. There were times where I would wipe my behind and there would be specks of blood from him trying to penetrate me that way. Just unimaginable things happening to a child. And it wasn't that he didn't try to penetrate me vaginally, it was just that it wouldn't go in. And even with me pretending to be asleep, I would kind of squirm a little bit because I just did not want that to happen. His behavior outside of the molestation was very confusing, acting like nothing was happening, nothing ever happened. So I remember him grabbing my face one time and like by the chin and lifting my chin up and looking at me in my eyes and saying, you should wear earrings. It would really bring out your face. Or another time I remember I had a boyfriend and my dad and my brother's mom would allow him to come over. And one time he came over and they weren't around and I was sitting on his lap. And this particular brother came in and had the nerve to be mad as if he wasn't doing, I don't know if he was jealous or if he was trying to be a big brother and really was doing something way worse to me. I also remember in the younger days of me being molested by him, like I would walk past him and I would try to like cover myself or like cover myself with my hands or turn my body to where my butt or my chest wouldn't go past him, and he would get angry like ain't nobody gonna touch you, which was very odd. There was one time when he called my house when I was in high school because I braided hair, and he called my house and pretended to be a girl because my mom answered the phone and she thought it was a girl. And when I got on the phone, it was him, and he was asking me could he come over to get his hair braided, which was extremely weird because even if it's late and you're calling my house, you are my sibling. So there still wouldn't have been a need for you to pretend to be a girl. I just had no clue how his mind worked. As time passed, I became angry. I became angry mostly with my mom because I thought that she was supposed to be able to look at me and be able to tell that this was happening to me. When I was 17, I was on the phone with my high school boyfriend and I was expressing my anger to him. And he said, well, she can't do anything about something she doesn't even know. And so he encouraged me to tell her. And that night, I got off the phone with him. I went into her room. I broke down crying and told her what had happened to me. By this time, it was over, but it still strongly affected me mentally. I didn't tell her details. I didn't tell her the ways that I was touched. I just told her that he molested me. My mom's solution was she took me to the doctor right away, not necessarily for a physical, because by this time there was no physical evidence, but she wanted resources to get me help for therapy. So I started therapy and I only went to about 4 sessions. I was very strong headed as a young kid, and even now, very strong headed. So I don't need help type of person. Even though at that time I did, I anybody who goes through something like this will eventually need some form of help. But I didn't feel like I could relate to the therapist. So I did go to about 4 sessions. That when you go through something like this, the therapist will highly encourage you to press charges. And so this is what she was encouraging me to do. The 6 year old me was showing up, the one who was scared of getting him in trouble, or the one who was scared of what it would do. By this time I was way more aware of what this type of thing would do to a family. So the me that was scared showed up, and I was like, no, like, I don't know yet, give me some time to think. Maybe by the third session I was like, okay. And the one thing that made me decide to go forth with pressing charges was I couldn't imagine him, for one, doing it to someone else and having a daughter. That's the main things that made me say, this has got to stop. The idea of me telling this time was much more intense because I knew for a fact he was facing jail time. So I went forth with pressing charges. They sent police to my house to take my statement. They had me circle him on paper in a lineup on paper. And from there, they decided it was enough for them to issue a warrant for his arrest. They also asked me, did I know of anyone else that it was happening to? And I told them yes, because I did. And that's not my story to tell. So I won't go into details about who this is and, like, who this person is. I felt this responsibility hanging over my head. This was the beginning of me having to tell this story multiple times. So not only did I have to tell it to the therapist, I had to tell it to the police, and I also had to tell it at trial. Once the warrant for his arrest was issued, he was arrested shortly after. This is in 2007. I was 17 years old. So when it happened, I received instant hate from that side of my family. Why are you doing this? And to me, it was a sense of denial. I say that because I remember around 11 or 12, I told my dad, and also around the age of 14, 15. This was the 14, 15, that was the time, the last time that it happened. And when I told, he would say, don't tell your mom because she will get the court involved. And, like, we don't want him to be in jail. Granted, I did not tell him the details of what was happening. I told him I was being touched by my brother. And so that's why I say there was a sense of denial. It became, this didn't happen to you. The very last time I told, his mother did kick him out of the house that day. And I just remember being hovered around so that I wouldn't call my mom and tell my mom what was happening to me and not go home, because they knew that if I went home, my mom would probably notice that something was wrong with me. And by that time, I just stopped going over there. I was just tired of dealing with it. The mental damage had already been done, but I was just tired of dealing with it physically. I felt a sense of betrayal and discomfort. And I get it now, just looking back, and this will be something I touch on in my healing. I get it. That's her son. And I'm not her daughter. When we went to trial, being that it was so much time in between it happening, there was no evidence of this. So it was simply my word against his. I told my story in front of a bunch of strangers. There were people that I knew in that courtroom, but the jury, the judge, just plenty of people that I had to tell my story in detail in front of. My dad hired a lawyer for my brother Lonnie, his son, and that lawyer grilled me like with no sympathy, no empathy. He grilled me as if he grew up in this household and was sure that nothing happened to me. My siblings testified against me, the ones that grew up in the same household as him. That was just under the order of my dad, and they felt like they were fighting for his life, and they were, because he was looking at a lot of time. And the reason he was looking at so much time is because he denied the deal they offered him. So they offered him, I'm not quite sure, I think it was about 20 to 22 years or something like that. And the counter was so ridiculous that my district attorney, she said, okay, well, we're going to go a different route. And he ended up getting 90 years. Yes, 90. There were 3 counts for me and 3 counts for the other person in this case. He received 15 years for each count. One person I felt protected by, which is my brother that I grew up in the same household with. This is also his father, but we have the same mother. I never felt like he didn't have my back. He had my back the whole time. I remember when I was testifying and he was in the courtroom, I remember seeing the pain in his eyes. I remember seeing the tears form in his eyes. He's 5 years older than me, but I remember seeing that pain. In any arguments with my dad or anything like that, he stood behind me and he had my back. It was like it was war. My brother Lonnie had received 90 years. And so our family, that side of my family, was like they hated me. Everything he was charged with what he did after the age of 18. They couldn't charge him for anything that he did as a minor. And after it all, I don't feel bad about the time he received. I don't wish I didn't tell. I'm grateful for the justice I received. And I'm grateful that he won't be able to harm anyone else, because more than the physical damage, this comes with mental damage. I think about who he's done this to, and they never got the opportunity to speak up. Him being convicted was not the end of this trauma. So the physical part of it, yes, definitely was trauma, but it was the psychological damage. What a brother should be to a sister, what a father should be to a daughter, what siblings should be to each other, considering the trial, the way I viewed sex and relationships, the lack of protection I felt is one of the things that created this void that I was trying to fill. My goal in doing this video is to be an advocate. I always knew that once I started my healing journey, I would be an advocate. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how that would show up, and here we are. So if you know something, say something. If you see something, say something. As I said before, my goal in sharing this is to share my growth. I've been guided by God and my ancestors to share this. Be on the lookout for the video on how I heal from this trauma. Subscribe, like, share. Hit that notification bell so that you are alerted when I am dropping one of these videos, and be loved.